Welcome back to the Business That Matters Spotlight. This is Warren Coughlin, your ever-loving host. Today is going to be an interesting conversation because it's not just going to be about a business story or a personal story, but it's also a story about how challenging it is to make positive change within an existing set of industry processes and standards, even within the limitations of science. Leonardo Giglio is the founder, along with his sister, or I shouldn't say founder, one of the co-owners, because we'll get into that story, of Tempo Flexible Packaging. Welcome to the Spotlight, Len.
Good morning, Warren. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Now, one of the things we do here on the Spotlight is I know that not everybody can pay attention or has the time to listen to an entire podcast. Sometimes people have to cut out early. So I like to ask guests to share one pearl of wisdom right off the top. So if there is somebody who's wanting to engage in responsible business practices while still making a decent buck, what would you suggest?
I would suggest that, leaning in with a strong ESG model for your business can still be successful, and having values like family values and scaling up a company are not fighting objectives. They can be one and the same. So have the courage to stick through it and go for it.
Now, for those who don't know, can you define what ESG is?
So environment and social governance could mean a lot of things to many different people. As a flexible packaging company, it means more than some of the soft side, which is, people, how we treat people, how we decide to be a good corporate citizen. But there's also the environmental aspect as a packaging manufacturer that we're really keen on. So for us, it's company culture and making sure that we're doing best standards by our people and our community. And then the second half would be, how we live in this world of business pertaining to resources, responsible manufacturing, and using everything we have to the best of our abilities without impacting the community in a negative way.
Nice. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, just, tell us what Tempo actually does, who do you do it for?
So Tempo is a flexible packaging manufacturer. We've been around since 1970. And we're located in southern Ontario in Innisfil, in Simcoe County. So the business has kind of evolved over the years, as you can imagine, over 50 years. We started off as a bag converter, making poly bags or plastic bags. And then over the years, we started bolting on other facets of the business to support that initiative. So we grew into a company that actually extruded and manufactures polyethylene films. And then we decided that we would want to start printing and decorating packaging in a more meaningful way. And then it just kind of evolved into all sorts of different types of flexible packaging. And today we use all sorts of materials. It's not just plastic. We use primarily plastic, and polyethylene would be what we're known for. But we do use some paper. We use some biomaterials, some compostable materials, and then all sorts of barrier materials because we predominantly service the food packaging space. And when you're dealing with the food space, food safety is number one, and then food shelf life would be number two. So we deal with a lot of different markets. As a Canadian manufacturer. In Canada, it's not like in the US where you can maybe specialize in something. When you're servicing Canada, you kind of have to learn how to do everything. So we do pet food, lawn and garden, a lot of things at your retail store. We do some medical, we do cannabis, we do construction. So we do a little bit of everything, which is kind of cool. It lets us learn a lot every single day.
It must require some creativity.
It does. And it's, by not being kind of focused in one area, you get key learnings from other industries and you get to apply them and then bring value to customers in completely different market segments. So it's really nice to get to have the ability to work with so many different market segments. And it's fun because I get to deal with my customers would be like going on an episode of how it's made, and you get to see how ice cream bars are made or how this pet treat is made. So you get to go to a lot of factories and see a lot of cool things and meet a lot of entrepreneurs or companies that are doing something different.
Nice. I want to hear more about that. But can you just define what you mean by flexible packaging?
So flexible packaging would be primary flexible package would be something like a poly bag or a stand-up pouch. And I got samples here. So we have a pouch here. It's got a reclosable zipper up the top. got a gusset on the bottom. This would be called a stand-up pouch. Very popular in your retail stores. And then we do all sorts of, produce packaging. That would be a simple poly bag. And then big dog food bags, stuff, anything like that, a flexible package. Not as opposed to a rigid would be like a pail or a container or something like that. So our materials are flexible, and we print directly onto them. And then we can format them into all different types of shapes and closure features.
So when I said I wanted to come back, you go out to a lot of other manufacturers, you see their manufacturing processes, you also see the challenges they face in their products. How does that kind of relationship influence your own creativity? Like I imagine you would both see efficient production processes that you may not have otherwise come across, and you must also face some interesting just creative challenges shaping your flexible packaging to a whole weird array of products.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You get the whole gamut. We deal with these really large, companies that have teams of engineers and people, and you go into facilities that are, this 5S or Lean Six Sigma methodology, perfect. And then we get to go into these, family-run startups and see what they're trying to do. And I think it's great because we definitely can bring value to everybody, but the opportunity to collaborate. So like my internal, specialist teams and engineering teams and R&D teams, when they're collaborating with our customers, that's where the real magic happens, because we try something new. And we typically love to have a partner that's open to try something, because we can give them option A, B, and C. Well, they'll give us the opportunity to put on their equipment, and we both get to learn something. And typically it's a win-win when everybody's open-minded. We are very custom, our business, as you can see from what I showed you, like it's all custom printed, custom sizes. So we don't make a widget. So when you're doing over 2,500 unique items every single year, you need to be flexible and work with people where they're at and where their facility and process and equipment is at. So it's kind of fun. You have to be pretty nimble.
So I'm going to give you a chance to brag, and the reason I'm saying this is because that creativity and that ability to work with others shows up in results. And you just actually won a pretty prestigious award, right?
Yeah, we just got back from New York last week. We won a PAC Global Award for Best in Class for Sustainable Packaging Innovation. So, and that's funny. That's a customer that I've known now for maybe 15 years. And it's great because we've had such a long relationship that they trusted us with this new product offering to the market, which was a recycle-ready stand-up pouch. And when you have somebody who's got a similar vision, we talked about ESG at the beginning, that's trying to do something better, it's easier for us to do our vision, which is, to be the preferred partner for sustainable packaging in North America. So that relationship has been like over 15 years. When I met them, they were literally jeans and dirty boots at a farm making pet treats, and now they're this multi-facility in Canada, the U.S., like huge success story. But that ability to be entrepreneurial spirit, try something new, and then trust us, to help them bring something to market has really paid off. So, yeah, that award last week, it's a real fun one for everybody at Tempo and for our partner.
And you were up against some pretty stiff competition on that one, weren't you?
Yeah. So PAC, the Packaging Consortium, it's a packaging group that's global. Head office is in Toronto, but it's expanded far past Toronto. So I mean, this competition, it went up against the likes of Pringles packaging from the UK, Colgate toothpaste packaging from the US. Like it's a pretty robust group of meaningful companies that were in there. And I think it's awesome I love packaging innovation. So to see all these companies come together and innovate a whole category like toothpaste tubes or, the snack food, I love it. I geek out on this stuff. So to be mentioned in that group was really nice. But for this, flexible packaging manufacturer in Innisfil, Ontario, to come home with a pretty substantial award, it means a lot to our team.
Geez, you could show up at the Oscars with that acceptance speech there, just to be recognized among my peers.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're a medium-sized enterprise. We are not the Pringles of the world. We're not the Colgate. So I mean, they have teams of people dedicated to do great things, and they are doing great things. So for our team to, kind of sit at the table for a few minutes is really nice.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Now, you said the business has been around since 1970. You don't look old enough to have even been a glint in your father's eye at that time. So,
No.
like, what's the story? How did you come to be sitting in the chair?
So how I came to be sitting in the chair. So Tempo is my father founded it with a partner, John Patterson. And back in 1970 in Mississauga, Ontario, they were very young in their early 20s, starting out this packaging business. And over the years, they took on a few more partners and really built a great company here in Innisfil. So we moved to Innisfil about in 1984. So I was born in Toronto, and then we moved up north to this new facility in 1984. If anybody knows geographically where Innisfil is, it's just south of Barrie, Ontario. There wasn't a lot going on. There still isn't. It's a pretty rural community. It's a wonderful community. But I pretty much grew up in this business, and I didn't really actually have any intentions of joining the family company. I was into science, and I thought I was going to get into something in the pharmaceutical side of the world. But over the years, a lot of events that would be hosted at Tempo. So I pretty much would come here. I'd work in the summers as a teenager in the factory on bag lines. And then, I had the opportunity when I was in school to join Tempo in a sales capacity. And I realized that it might actually be fun, because every time I would go to an industry event or follow my father to like PACX in Chicago or something like that, I really actually became to really get really interested in this industry. So my oldest sister and I, we've been kind of in the business. She's been in the business for over 20 years. I've been in it for about 16. And back in 2012, my father unfortunately passed away. So it kind of forced us at a young age to get a little bit more involved in the management side of the business, even though we were just at that time in sales roles. And over the years, we just kept learning more and more. And the business has been fortunately growing. And we're now at a point where my family is the sole owner of the company. All the other partners that my father had, as you could imagine, are senior to me. So they've all retired. They've had successful careers, and they're all living a great life in retirement, happy retirement. And now this next generation is taking an opportunity to keep the business going, but maybe just in a slightly different way, focused on sustainable initiatives. So it's kind of a unique situation to be a millennial packaging business owner, but it's a fun challenge nonetheless.
Now, as most who've tried it know, having a business partner is no easy thing. There's always competing ideas, goals. There can be power struggles, stuff like that. Doing that with someone who used to tell on you or steal your toys, that's another thing altogether. Can you talk about that? Like, how have you two made it work?
I mean, to be honest with you, it's fantastic. So we have another sister who's not in the business, and the three of us get along very well. Growing up, yeah, like every other sibling, there's obviously you get into your little spats. But to be honest with you, my sisters and I are pretty aligned with what we're trying to do and how this company has given our family an opportunity to do things that maybe not everybody gets to do. So the nice thing about being a business owner with your siblings is absolute trust. So I mean, the good news is, we can have conversations. We can be very clear and honest with each other, and I don't have to worry about disrupting the fabric of our relationships, because our relationship is pretty much as strong as it gets. And I do know other sibling business owners and business partners in other industries, and I've seen it go the other way. But fortunately, my sisters and I, we're family first and business second. And I think when we come to that conclusion, usually things go the right way. We're pretty aligned.
And does that extend outside the family to the rest of the business? Like, do you promote family first within the culture?
100%. We think, family values are the strongest values. So, I mean, we've had people there's people that have been here longer than I've been here. So I mean, we have people that have been here for 40 years, and there's people that their kids work here, and there's multi-generations. So I mean, that's really important to us. We think that we want to help each other, especially being in a more rural community. We think that supporting one another like a family is kind of one of our strengths here. We don't have a lot of turnover. So yeah, that's a key part of our success, and getting people to stay through, good times and bad times, through the challenging and opportunistic times.
Now let's just shift a little bit towards the sustainability part of the business. So as I recall, you developed your first sustainable product in like 2014, right? You've been at this for a while.
Yeah. So the latest trend, and it's more than a trend because really globally they've adopted. For example, this package I have in front of me, this is made of different types of plastics, and what that does is it creates a challenge at the recycling stream. Because right now in Ontario, we love our blue box in Ontario, and it's really designed to have aluminum, glass, paper, and they have very specific streams and very specific end markets to collect and then resell and manufacture something else. In terms of plastics, there's many variations of plastics. And the wonderful thing about that is we've created packaging that can go all over the world, even in outer space, right, with good shelf life. But when it's time for this package to be at its end of life, it's really going to be destined for landfill because it doesn't have a lot of value at the end of its life. So back in 2014, even though Tempo has a history of trying, materials that are made of corn or whatever, like 20 years ago, we were trying all sorts of stuff. But back in 2014, I had the opportunity through the PAC, through the Packaging Consortium, to go to a MRF. And what a MRF is, it's a material recovery and sorting facility in a municipality. So where your blue box goes, it's the big place where they all get collected and brought in.
For people who don't know, blue box is the color of a box for recycling that certain types of products go in, right? We've got a blue box.
It's a curbside recycling system that we have in Ontario, or really across Canada. In Canada, we really love our blue box program. And so I got to see our packaging in the recycling facilities, and I got to talk to these recyclers saying, okay, how do you like our packaging? How does it work? And a lot of them told me the challenges they were having. And it's a completely different end of the supply chain, right? I'm at the beginning manufacturing, and they're at the end collection and sortation. And it was eye-opening to see, the end of the supply chain was having a hard time with what we were making. So we looked at ourselves and said, what can we do to improve the end of the supply chain's opportunity to recycle our product? So we went to the drawing board, worked with some suppliers, internally figured out some materials, and made a stand-up pouch with a reclosable feature that was made of one material. And I know that sounds okay, who cares, but that was a pretty big deal back in 2014, and the cost was pretty much double. So it was a challenge in manufacturing, and it was a challenge in getting people to understand why we were doing this. But we stuck with it, and fast forward 10 years later to today, the whole world is trying to get everybody to switch to this type of packaging. And there's plastic packs around the world that are trying to figure out, how do we make plastics easier to recycle and keep them out of the environment and keep them out of landfills? And this is kind of the solution that everybody's come up with. So
it didn't take off though, right? In 2014,
it did not take off in 2014. I mean, we had a handful of customers, maybe 2018, start to adopt it. And it was, like I said, for a few reasons. It was pretty expensive. I mean, we're talking about a business that there's a lot of things that are commoditized. So to do something that's a little bit different and increase their unit cost, certain industries were able to say, okay, I'll pay X amount of cents more for a package because I know it's a better package for the environment. Everybody wasn't ready for that. But, through the end of the pandemic, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation created some plastic packs around the world. And a lot of brand owners got together and said, look, we could do better with our plastic use. And this is where, okay, they started looking at what are their options. And monomaterial flexible packaging was one that people realized is a serious opportunity to improve plastic packaging. And now it's all everybody talks about. There's certain brand owners that are saying they're going to change everything by 2025. So it's quite the shift in 10 years. It went from nobody wanted to talk about it to now it must be done. And it's all good. It's great that people are actually giving it a shot.
Now, I can imagine there's somebody listening here going, well, why do we have to use plastic at all? Like, we all know that, coming from fossil fuel products and things like that, it's still bad for the environment. So why do we have to use plastic at all? And you were explaining to me some stuff about like just food preservation and things like that. The material science creates a limitation on your ability to just move away from plastics entirely. And I just think it's useful for people to understand some of those limitations on making the environmental shift.
Well, I think there's a few reasons. I mean, plastic, I think during the global pandemic, I think everybody realized that plastic has value. Whether it was a plastic mask, a plastic, antigen test, or those plexiglass, at the grocery store. When used properly, plastic is a material that brings a lot of value to us. So I would say, from a packaging standpoint, not everybody is growing their own produce and everything that they consume. So we rely on a supply chain to get us our products, whether they're food products or toiletries, medical products, you name it, right? So the reality is, there's many different materials. So there's aluminum, there's glass, there's paper, and they all have great benefits for certain applications, but there's no real one-size-fits-all material. So the reality is plastic has a role to play in actually being beneficial to the environment. It's very lightweight, low energy to use in a lot of ways. And the biggest challenge with plastic is collecting it and putting it back into, the supply chain. And the term that is being used right now is called the circular economy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that term. So in the past, the circular economy was very thought of like aluminum, for example, aluminum cans. It had a very natural circular economy because aluminum is so expensive and heavy that it already made a case to collect it and recycle it because you can get a lot of value for aluminum cans. We all remember returning bottles for 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever you might have had, even the beer store, stuff like that. Plastic didn't have that type of business model baked into it. It was so cheap to manufacture virgin that it was great for businesses. They can ship plastics all over the world. And then people didn't really think about what happened after that. So I think now we have an opportunity to maybe collect it better. But the second part of circular economy is economy. And I think this is where plastic really shines. The fact that it is so inexpensive is one of its biggest strengths, even though it's a challenge in getting people to collect it and then reuse it. Right now, like the cost of just going to the grocery store has increased for everybody. And if the cost of your packaging doubled overnight because instead of using a lightweight plastic package, you went to a rigid glass container or metal container or even rigid plastic container, I don't think everybody would be so happy with that. So just throwing the cost back on the consumer, saying let's use something that's less efficient because the current infrastructure for recycling, it just works better with aluminum. I think that's kind of a very oversimplified version. I think right now with monomaterial pouches and plastic, I think we're all looking at each other saying it might be a good time to revisit how we collect and sort and recycle materials. And maybe these new lightweight packages and plastics have a lot of value on the front end. Let's make sure we capture them to bring value on the back end. So, I mean, nothing is simple. Every single opportunity, whether you're trying to get bananas from one part of the world to another part of the world, or get just people's medication from A to B, there's usually a ideal packaging format, and there's no one size fits all when it comes to material science. That's for sure.
And I think that's important. I actually interviewed somebody a couple of years ago who was wanting to be a sustainable clothing manufacturer, and his challenge was, in where he lived, he could either, because there's a whole notion about local buying, and local buying reduces fuel costs for transportation, and you're supporting local economy and all that kind of stuff. Or you could be organic. Ideally, you'd want to say be both, but there were no organic producers close to him. So he had to make a choice between organic or local.
Yeah.
And one of the things, the reason I bring this up and one of the reasons I kind of want to have the conversation is in the universe that I play in of people who are wanting to make the world a better place while making, a profitable business, it's easy to criticize people for not being, quote, pure, that there's some compromise that they've had to make. And I always want people to think about, perfect is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
And we need to be moving in the direction, understanding there's limitations. Like just to hear that, okay, aluminum has a market for the product, but because plastic is so cheap, there's no market for it that is paid for creating that kind of circular system. So we need to innovate to be able to get there. And in the course of that innovation, it might get a little bit bumpy, but as long as people like you are out there, like continuously trying to do it better, that initiative, that desire to do better needs to be supported rather than attacked or criticized.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, I think, and doing better, I think we're getting better at defining what better means. And what's nice is you see companies start to have greenhouse gas elimination targets and energy consumption targets. So we're starting to use data to inform our decision making. And it's nice because it's not just a matter of opinion. Hey, I sell this type of pouch, that's why I think it's the best packaging format. We have these kind of objective tools to guide us and say, look, for this application, you have your choice between packaging format A, B, and C, and which is the best for the environment. And you know what? For different supply chains, there might actually be different, answers to that question. So I think, using data to support these arguments is great. And to your point, not letting maybe some of those mainstream, headlines that you see in national newspapers about plastics, get in the way of good data. Because I think, data might surprise you, especially in the world of plastics.
Yeah. Now the goal, ultimately the goal to make things sustainable and make the environment safe is a worthy one, but it's just not as simple as a light switch.
Exactly.
Now, having that kind of focus that you do, like winning a sustainable award and, trying to innovate all the time, what's that done for the culture of the organization? Like, do you find you attract better quality people? Are people bought into the mission? Like, how does that translate into the relationships with your team?
I think it translates quite a bit. So when we announced, we did like a soft announcement last week to our team that we won the award, and there's definitely a buzz around the office. I mean, to get something to the shelf, it takes quite a bit, right? So when somebody's developing a product and they're trying to figure out what the supply chain looks like, what the packaging looks like, and you're helping somebody get it to a retailer like a Costco, there's a lot of people that are involved to do that. So even though there's one person standing at the end of the line getting the finished product and putting it into a box, everybody before that, sales, customer service, accounting, shipping, they're all part of making this happen. And I think our team really sees that. They really understand that regardless of where you are in our organization, it takes all of us to make this happen. So I think everybody really takes this as a win. And I think what we're doing is, again, as a business that's hiring people based on our values and making sure they align with our values first before we look at resumes with these unbelievable skill sets or maybe degrees that have all these letters after it that makes them fantastic people. People that understand that we're trying to do something different and we want to lean in on the sustainability, get excited about this kind of stuff. And it's nice because being in a plastics environment, like you said, I think the general consensus from consumers is plastics are negative. There's a negative connotation to them. So it takes somebody who's actually inspired to be part of the team to keep that daily grind of believing that we're going in the right direction and just showing up every day and slowly making those marginal improvements to get there.
Mm-hmm. And when you said you recruit on values, how do you do that? Like, that's one of those interesting logistic questions. Like, people talk about that all the time, hire on values, but how do you actually interview for values? Like, how do you draw that out so that you're making an aligned decision?
So our director of people and culture, she is I almost think she's got a sixth sense. She's unbelievable at understanding and reading people. We do use tools like behavioral tests and have people take some tests to help shape kind of what they're in, naturally into. But I think we like to talk to people about who they are and what they think and what makes them tick, not just about what they know and what have they done at a previous job, right? So I think we try to drive out who they are as a person and see if they fit culturally with our organization. And I have to say, this is not an exact science. A lot of it is a little bit of feeling still. We do have data points. We are using some tests, but that is just one data point. We don't make a determination based on this test and the algorithm decides whether or not they're a cultural fit. Some of it is just based on coming to our facility. We love bringing people in before they're hired, giving them tours, walking the floor, talking to people and just seeing if this is what they like. Because, once you're in, you got to be committed to this. So yeah, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's much more than resumes and what people have achieved in their past.
And what happens? Because this is always the question that people ask around values-based hiring. So what happens when the wolf gets in the chicken coop? Like what happens when somebody gets past your screening who actually isn't values aligned, and you realize that a couple months or even 6 months into their tenure?
So, I mean, again, as a family business, maybe we sometimes let that linger a little too long. We like to give everybody a shot. So I think, giving everybody an opportunity to be successful is number one. We always look at ourselves. If something's not going right, we always look at ourselves first and say, well, okay, what are we doing to create an environment that this person's not thriving or acclimating well with the rest of the team? So I think that's our first inclination, is look inward. And then we secondly look at the person and say, okay, like if we're giving you the tools, what tools do you need? And then we give them all the tools we need. We give them coaching. And after a while, we just got to make sure that this person is the right fit. And not everybody's the right fit for every organization.
Sure.
And that's just how it is. But right now we're at like a 98% retention rate. So, I mean, we're not perfect, but for the most part, these are people that work well together and want to come in every day and work together.
Nice. So what are, taking over from a parent in a business, and then growing through this kind of industry change, what are the kind of skills that you've had to acquire that maybe surprised you? You went in there, you said you started in sales, you had a science background. I'm sure you came in as a young person knowing the business, feeling fairly confident, and then you probably bumped up against some stuff. Like what were the surprising skills you needed to develop?
I mean, I think most family businesses and young entrepreneurs realize you have to wear a lot of hats. So being very well-rounded, I think, is a must. So I'm always looking for a book or a TED Talk or a YouTube clip with a perspective of always trying to understand many different angles. You definitely cannot be rigid. You need to be very fluid and open to different communication styles and different approaches to different problems. Again, there's no silver bullet to anything. I think it's definitely been a challenge with an evolving plastics industry and being a Gen 2, taking over the company in the middle of a pandemic was also very unique, but it was kind of again, what's unique is but the pandemic, there was no playbook. So even the CEOs that had 10, 20, 30 years experience kind of needed to refigure it out, relearn, and be quick on their toes. And so at that point, I'm definitely at a disadvantage as a young leader because I don't have all the years of experience. But I mean, everybody was kind of like clean slated during the pandemic. And it's like, revisit your business model, revisit your organizational culture, revisit your IT infrastructure and how people work. Are they working from the office? Are they working from home? So, a lot of other CEOs that I would talk to were all going through this kind of steep learning curve, even though they had all this experience. So it's kind of, I guess I kind of got lucky in a sense where, I got to start at a time where everybody was kind of starting fresh. Um, but like I said, it's a daily challenge, and we wake up every day and we're just trying to make small incremental improvements. And at the end of the year, we look back and say, okay, we did a good job. Great.
So what's next for Tempo?
So what's next for Tempo? So Tempo is, we're growing. So we've added 40 people to our team last year.
Wow.
So I mean, we're really trying to take that next step and maintaining that small family values company, but trying to get to that more formal, corporate organizational structure is what we're playing with every day. So, we're sitting around 200 people now, and I was told somewhere around 150 people, you're no longer a small company, but we are desperately trying to hang on to that as much as we can and keep that culture going. But we know that we can expand, and we know that this industry and this organization has a lot of opportunity. So we're growing more to service most of North America, not just Canada. We're looking at expanding, to more facilities. We have some trial facilities in the US right now that we're partnering with. But we're poised for growth. So the reality is there's a lot of things that we can do. We're still focused on being a leader in sustainable packaging. And I think over the next couple of years, all the hard work over the past 10 years in the R&D that we've been doing is really, really, really going to pay off, because it takes a long time to bring something to market that works. So that's Tempo's next step. We're going to continue to lean in to sustainability. We're going to continue to do what we think is right. And we think, there's a lot of people already in Canada that think the way we think, and we think the US is the next market that is going to slowly switch into a more sustainable mindset. And that market is 10 times larger than the one we have in Canada. So, I mean, again, there's more opportunity than we could probably even handle. So we're just very fortunate to be in that position right now.
I love the optimism. I remember I had a buddy years and years ago, like this is long, I'm betraying my age. But when free trade first came in, he was working for a furniture manufacturer. And he was like, this is amazing. And the owner was like, oh my God, all these Americans are going to come in and take over my business. And he was like, what are you talking about? We now have access to the biggest market. Yeah. It was just such an interesting distinction in thinking. Like a lot of Canadian businesses have that sort of more defensive posture, mm-hmm. But you're adopting that more optimistic posture, which is like, look, there's this really huge market that we can take advantage of.
Oh, yeah.
Do you come by that optimism naturally, or was that something you learned?
Well, no, I'm optimist by heart. But it's a type of optimism that understands reality. So it's not like I'm head in the clouds optimist that doesn't think about the future. I like to live in the future, but at the same time, my optimism is just there's a better way, and we can do this more successfully in the future. That's the type of optimism I have. But it has to be based on something that's well grounded. So again, I'm saying a lot of the data would suggest optimism is the right approach to what we're doing right now. Right. And with again, the more recent trends of reshoring and a lot of, manufacturers wanting to get their supply chains more localized, I think a lot of people that have been buying globally over the past decade are starting to come back. So it means that, North American manufacturing is going to have maybe a little bit of a resurgence, which is really nice because, as we know, manufacturing has been harder and harder to do, especially in like Southern Ontario, an expensive place to be. So again, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic.
Good for you. Yeah, I always conclude with a little rapid fire. One decision or action that most helped you get where you are.
One decision or action that helped me get where I am. I would say, saying yes to meeting people and having different perspectives. If somebody connects with me on LinkedIn, like yourself, Warren, I like to say yes and give everybody an opportunity to connect. And I always feel like I can always learn something from somebody I meet. So I'm always giving everybody an opportunity to say hi and what are you all about?
And if you had to do it over again, is there anything you would do differently?
If I had to do it over again, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things I would do differently. I mean, I'm constantly learning, evolving, and we're looking at our strategy. At the end of the day, I mean, I think I would probably be doing things the same way. We're trying to do all the right things for the right reasons. I think the path we're on is the path we started 5 years ago, and I'm still happy with this path. So right now, no regrets.
Nice. One aspect of running a business you've yet to master.
Um, I can't clone myself. So I mean, there doesn't ever seem to be enough time in a day. I still do a lot of my I put in a lot of hours, and I'd like to get to a spot where I'm more organized and we have enough structure that I can have less hours. So, my goal is, sorry, something just turned on here. Sorry, my goal is to be able to figure out a little bit more work-life balance when you have a young family.
Nice. And one last two questions. One personal quality that you most had to improve or overcome to succeed.
Personal quality to overcome. I think, understanding there's many ways to do something, and getting the perspective from different people is really important. I think what I've definitely learned is that even if you have all the answers and you have the right strategy, an organization needs buy-in. So getting my team to really buy into the vision was something that I had to really understand. That it wasn't just the right vision; it was getting everybody to agree it's the right vision and on their own terms, and then help us move forward.
That's a great insight. It's not enough to be right.
No.
Yeah. And what's
No.
one personal quality that most contributed to your success? No false humility. Just what did you rock?
I think resourcefulness and resilience. I mean, if again, especially being in the plastic space, you have to really have conviction that you're doing the right thing. So if you're not going to be resilient, you can get distracted and pushed all over the place. But knowing what you're doing is the right thing, and having the courage to just get up every day and keep at it, that is what you need right now to be in the space that I'm in.
Thank you so much. I love this conversation. I think there's two big takeaways for me out of it that I hope people pay attention to. One was sort of the importance of having that, and not just the typical word of vision, but having that sort of impact vision, the thing I want to do to make things better, but then also understanding that to achieve that requires the cultivation of skills and relationships. What some people do in the sort of wanting to do good space is thinking that just their dream of having an impact is sufficient. But what you've been talking about is, no, that isn't sufficient. You've really got to make sure that you're being tactical and strategic and thoughtful and cultivating all the sort of business skills and the culture that's going to help you get there. So congratulations on all your success, and I look forward to hearing about more of it.
Well, thank you, Warren. I appreciate the opportunity to chat today.
And if people want to get a hold of you because they want to innovate some packaging, how can they do that?
So, I mean, definitely LinkedIn is a great way. It's the only social media I have. So LinkedIn, Leonardo Giglio. Our website is www.tempoflexiblepackaging.com.
Right on. Thanks very much.
Great to see you again. Take care.
You too.